I'm James Rosone.
And I'm Miranda Watson. We're the husband and wife writing team that created the military thriller Monroe Doctrine series and the military sci-fi series The Rise of the Republic.
We have some additional content we'd like to share with you guys today, and we hope you'll find it informative and entertaining. We're planning to create more videos similar to this in the future.
As always, please like, share, and subscribe. Now let's get started.
Chapter 30. Link Up. 24th April 1991. FOB Copperhead, Prince Abdulmajid bin Abdulaziz Airfield. The 1st Brigade had designated the airfield outside of Moghira as FOB Copperhead. The 2nd Brigade had begun arriving the day before but remained on the airfield, preparing to go forward and seize the next objective that would support the 28th Infantry Division's move forward. The 28th Infantry was moving across fairly open terrain and had pretty much chewed up the 51st Iraqi Division, leaving only one regiment intact. That regiment was conducting a delay action, sniping at the 28th, but not doing any serious damage to the forward progress of the division. 2nd Brigade would fly out once the link-up with the 29th was completed with the 1st Brigade. Their objective lay 83 miles to the northeast in Mudesis. It was early morning when 1st Brigade got indications that the 29th was not far away, and those indications were Iraqi units from the 37th Iraqi Division attempting to move past FOB Copperhead. Battle Force 6, Gator 6. Go ahead, Gator 6. Battle Force 6, we have 6 BTR-60s moving towards our positions at high speed. They have no flank security out that we can see and appear to be only interested in getting north. Over. Roger, Gator 6. You're cleared to light them up. Corey turned to his operations officer, the S3, and told him to contact Brigade and inform them. Before the S3 could make the call, Bastogne 6 made a net call. All Bastogne elements, this is Bastogne 6. Sabre 6 is reporting a large Iraqi formation moving this way from the south with the 2-9 right on their ass. Identify your targets and engage. Let's close the back door on these guys. Bastogne 6 out. Corey looked at his map and the locations of all his units down to platoon levels. As he studied it, he recognized the need to move some of the Delta anti-tank vehicles, as they were all oriented for the most part to the north. Delta Dog 6, Battle Force 6, over. Go ahead, Battle Force 6. Delta Dog, Sabre reports Iraqi forces moving from the south. Leave a small element covering the north, but move to engage. Let me know when they're in position. Roger, Battle Force 6. We're moving now. Williams, let's move it, Sergeant Dodge said as he smacked the top of the tow Humvee. Immediately, Private Williams started the vehicle and dropped it into gear. He knew exactly where they were going and how to get there, as they had rehearsed this before, expecting the Iraqi forces to be coming from the south. They had prepared a new position and had it well camouflaged, offering concealment. Now, if it just had overhead cover, it would be an ideal position, Williams thought. It took all of 5 minutes to reach the new position, located in an orchard south of the airfield. The brigade had developed a plan that positioned all 60 tow weapons around the southern end of the airfield to engage in a kill zone. The kill zone was 1,200 meters to the southeast of the runway. As Sergeant Dodge's vehicle rolled into his position, the fire team quickly got to work preparing last-minute details. When all was ready, they played the waiting game as everyone else was doing. They could see dust clouds mixed with black smoke from burning vehicles in the distance, but beyond the range of the TOW system. Occasionally, they would see an attack helicopter. "Hey, Sarge, do you think the attack helicopters will kill them all before they get to us?" Williams asked. "Who knows? They'll damage a lot of them, I'm sure. We may wind up with a bunch of dismounted infantry coming this way if they lost enough vehicles." The team continued to watch the dust come closer, and soon the sounds of an engagement could be heard. Dodge had confidence in his team. They had all been together since the start of this war. They had all grown up together in this war as well, Dodge thought. They were no longer teenage dudes back on the block and wouldn't return home to that lifestyle, not after having gone through this war together. They would go home as men that had seen the worst of humanity, and yet, at times, the best of it. Sarge, we have company approaching. I count 6 T-72 tanks and 6 BTR-60s in a wide formation. Can't see what's behind them because of the dust, Corporal Brown said, looking through the Tau sight. Put on the ANTAS-4 night sight. That infrared capability will allow you to see through some of the dust. What's the range to the first elements? Dodge asked, as he handed the night sight up to Brown. I'd estimate they're 5,000 meters. Brigade will start hitting them with artillery pretty soon, Dodge said. First, they'll lay in fastcam in the kill zone. Then they'll hit them with VT fuse to make them button up. That's when we engage and not before. Got it? I got it, Brown said as he finished mounting the night sight and started to look through it at the approaching enemy. What he was seeing was fuzzy red images of vehicles giving off a high heat resolution. Sarge, I don't think we have enough rounds, Brown slowly said. I'm looking at maybe 30 vehicles heading this way. This way or towards the brigade kill zone? Dodge asked with some concern in his voice. Towards the kill zone, but there are a couple heading towards us, Brown said. Okay, when the first vehicle gets to our marker, hit him. We should get off 3 shots before we need to move. Williams, start the vehicle, Dodge ordered, and the vehicle came to life. Brown continued to watch the enemy vehicles that were approaching his hide position. Previously, they had paced off 3,000 meters and placed a distinctive marker made out of a pile of rocks. Once those vehicles reached that point, Brown would fire. Time of flight for the missile was 10 seconds. At 3,000 meters, they were outside the effective range of the T-72 tank's main gun. Dodge had calculated that at the speed of the T-72, he could fire 3 rounds before the tank would be in range of the Tau positions. Brown, engage the T-72s first, Dodge directed, as he stood by with an additional round to load as soon as the first hit its target. They're about there. His words were cut off by the sound of impacting artillery on the Iraqi task force. The variable time fuse artillery created airbursts that stripped away antennas, punctured external fuel tanks, and killed anyone that was outside the vehicle. On the way, Brown yelled as the Tau missile left the launcher with 2 guidance wires trailing behind the missile. Brown continued to hold steady on the target, a T-72. His aim point was the point where the turret met the hull of the tank, as there would be no protective armor at that point if she was wearing any. When the missile impacted, there was a flash explosion, and the turret popped off the top of the tank. Reload! Dodge shouted as he slammed another round into the launcher. Target T-72, 2,500 meters, Brown yelled in a steady voice. Engage, Dodge ordered, and another round left the launcher for its 8-second flight to the new target. This time the turret didn't pop off, but a blinding flash in the side of the vehicle was noticed as it turned broadside just before the missile reached it. The next thing they saw was a column of flame roaring out of the turret's top hatch. Reload, Dodge ordered again. Target, BTR-60. Command vehicle. Engage. And for a third time in less than 1 minute, another missile left the launcher. The Tau missile destroyed tanks and obliterated thin-skinned vehicles like the BTR-60. Killing this vehicle wasn't so important, but killing a commander was. Williams, get us out of here now! Dodge yelled as small arms rounds buzzed through the trees like angry bees. Lieutenant Colonel Frank Hancock commanded the 1st Battalion, 327th Infantry Regiment of the 1st Brigade. Like Battle Force, his battalion had participated in the airfield takedown and then pushed out to take up a position southwest of the airfield. He was uncomfortable not having his Delta Company, as they had been attached to 2nd of the 327th, to help defend the airfield. His consolation was the fact that he was in some very restrictive terrain, with a major highway running through the mountains. and thus his tuaos wouldn't be as effective due to the short distances. His dragons and AT-4 would have to be his armor punch. Frank was making the rounds visiting with his soldiers when his RTO came up to him. "Sir, Bastogne 6 is on the horn for you." Taking the hand mic, he transmitted, "Bastogne 6, Bulldog 6, over. Bulldog 6, you have vehicles approaching your position. Identity is unknown. Over." "Roger, Bastogne 6. We'll be on the lookout for them. Over." "Keep me posted. Bastogne 6 out." Handing the brigade command radio hand mic back to the RTO, Frank reached for the battalion command net hand mic. "All Bulldog elements, Bulldog 6, over." Each of the 3 remaining companies responded in order. "This is Bulldog 6. We have vehicles approaching from the south. Be advised the identity is unknown. They could be bad guys or friendlies. Make positive identification before engaging." "How copy?" Each company came back that they understood. Now it was just a matter of waiting. The Sector 1st Battalion occupied was easily defended. It was the southern end of Moghera, with 2 major roads entering from the 1 major road that the 7th and 37th Iraqi divisions had used in approaching for their initial attack. The sides of the road were littered with broken and destroyed Iraqi vehicles and equipment. Frank had inspected the positions earlier, but was concerned that night was approaching, and identification of friend or foe was going to be difficult. All day, Iraqi elements had been attempting to get through his sector. Previously, Frank had been instructed to allow individuals to continue north without vehicles or weapons. The Corps couldn't take more prisoners at this point. Vehicles were another matter. Stop or destroy. The Dragon and AT-4 weapons had done just that throughout the day. The fight at the airfield had quieted down, and the 1st Battalion Delta Company, the anti-tank company, was back in his sector and moving to positions. "Bulldog 6, Bulldog Pup, over," the scout platoon leader, Lieutenant Bradshaw, called, using his unauthorized call sign. "Bulldog Pup 6, go ahead." 6, we have vehicle traffic approaching." The platoon leader gave the coordinates. "Roger, I copy. Can you identify?" "Over," Bulldog 6 asked. "Negative, over." "Roger, continue to observe. If you make positive ID, let me know immediately. Bulldog 6 out." The 29th Infantry Division had launched their attack, as the elements of the 101st were flying out to seize the airfield. The road trip was 8 or 9 miles of stop-and-go traffic for the frontline unit, the 1st Battalion, 115th Infantry Brigade. The stop-and-go was caused by a combination of getting damaged Iraqi vehicles out of the road and contact with retreating Iraqi units. "Hey, Lieutenant." "Lieutenant," Sergeant Peterson whispered softly. "What you got?" Lieutenant Pyle asked. They had dismounted from their vehicles and were on foot 200 yards ahead of the vehicles, which were in overwatch positions. "Sir, about 200 yards up ahead, maybe more. I thought I saw someone light a cigarette. It stuck out like a sore thumb in my nods," Sergeant Peterson pointed out. As dark as the night was, the flame from a lighter would be like a beacon. "Okay, let's move up for a closer look," Pyle instructed, and notified his platoon to move up. "Charger 6, Pony 1, over," Pyle called, wanting to inform the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Gooderjohn. "Pony 1, Charger 6, over," Gooderjohn replied. He really hated the new call signs that the powers that be had assigned to his battalion. "Charger 6, we have possible positions," Pyle told him, and passed on the coordinates. "Roger, I have artillery on call. First round Ilum. Be prepared to adjust," Gooderjohn instructed. "Bulldog Pup, LP1. Lieutenant Bradshaw had placed a 2-man listening post out 300 meters forward of his position, which was 300 meters forward of the 1st Rifle Company. "Go, LP1, he responded. "Bulldog Pup, we have movement. Appears to be mechanized vehicles 500 meters south of our position. Over." LP1, can you identify? Over, Bradshaw asked. Negative. We'll continue to observe, standing by to adjust artillery. The LP provided the grid coordinates where he wanted the artillery to land when called for. Did you hear that, Lieutenant? Sergeant Peterson asked, stopping in his tracks and taking a knee. Yeah, sounded like a squelch on an FM radio. Damn Iraqis could be setting us up for an artillery strike. I'm not seeing anything in these nods. Let me call the BC and light this place up. Turning to his RTO, Lieutenant Pyle took the hand mic and made the call for artillery support. Bulldog 6, Bulldog Pup, over. Bulldog Pup, go. Bulldog 6 requests artillery now at TRP 310. 1 round Ilum, over. Roger. As Frank approved the shot, his F-scored called the battalion mortar platoon and requested illumination on the coordinates provided. Pony 1, shot over, the fire support officer called, as the battalion mortar platoon dropped an Ilum round down the tube and it fired. Bulldog Pup, shot out, the fire support officer called, as the battalion mortar platoon dropped an Ilum round down the tube and it fired. Simultaneously, the 2 illumination rounds flew in opposite directions to the same location and ignited at 1,500 feet. The entire area was bathed in a white light, with shadows eerily moving around as the 2 1,000,000 candle power flares, suspended under their parachutes, drifted to the ground, twisting in the night air. Both platoon leaders suddenly realized who the other was and called, "Check fire," before any high explosive rounds could be fired. The link-up had been made. Everyone breathed a bit easier. Chapter 31. Not good. 24th of April, 1991. 2nd Republican Guard, HQ. Medina, Saudi Arabia. General Al-Hamdani, the last of our units is ready to depart. They will serve as a rear guard as we move to Buraida, his aide told him. General Al-Hamdani was wrestling with the thought of having to retreat from his positions as he looked over a map of the western region. I cannot believe that the pencil pushers could not have sent 1 or 2 more divisions to me. With those additional divisions, we would have broken through. With the American divisions going north, with 1 more division, I could break through to the coast. But no, Kusei, our military genius leader, says retreat. He thinks the Americans moving north will put them behind us and cut our supply lines, and they would. But I could also get behind them into their supply lines before they could cut mine. How stupid of Kusei. Very well. Be sure to instruct all commanders that I do not want any needless destruction of property or harm to civilians. We came as liberators and we will leave as such. I will not be accused of wanton destruction. Understood? Yes, sir. I will repeat the order to them to make sure they understand. Your helicopter is on the pad to get you and fly you to Buraida, where the Ivy Corps commander will meet you, the aide indicated. General Al-Hamdani picked up his hat, looked around the office one last time, thinking about what could have been instead of what was, and walked out the door. The powerful and exalted Republican Guard could not dislodge 2 American divisions of paratroopers. They should hang their heads in shame. Now maybe Baghdad will not treat us like the bastard children at a family reunion, Lieutenant General Ghalib Ghanem thought as he waited for General Al-Hamdani to land. They are coming back through my lines with their tails between their legs like some whipped dog. Maybe if they get out of my way, then I can destroy the Americans. General Ghanem saw Al-Hamdani's aircraft landing, but was not about to get out of the car until the dust had settled from the turning rotor blades. Finally, he exited his civilian requisitioned Mercedes 400 SL. General Al-Hamdani, so good to see that you are well, Ghanem said as he approached and exchanged salutes, followed by a handshake. Cut the crap, Ghanem. You're only glad to see me humiliated and out of your way. Are you ready to receive my forces through your lines and provide the resupply that we requested? I have no desire to be here any longer than it takes to move my units through, Al-Hamdani said. His tone reflected his sour mood. That is what I always admired about you. Even in the face of defeat, you come right to the point. Nice to see you too. Yes, we have everything in place to receive what is left of your force and push it on its way, Ganem said, enjoying the not-so-subtle digs. The sooner I get your people out of here, the sooner I can complete my defenses. I have a car and driver standing by to take you to a residence for you. If you need anything, they know how to contact me. Good day, sir. Ganem saluted and returned to his car. The arrogant bastard. He loses practically his entire corps, and still he thinks his shit does not stink. We will see who is smiling when I crush the Americans. Driver, back to headquarters, Ganem directed. Arriving back at the headquarters he had established at the Aramax Logistics Center, he went straight into the operations section. Spotting his operations officer, he motioned him to follow the brigadier to his office. You wish to speak to me, General? Brigadier General Al-Bu Muhair asked. I just spoke with General Al-Hamdani. He says the Americans are heading north after the Second Corps and not coming this way. There may be some Saudi forces following the remnants of his corps, but nothing that 1 or 2 divisions could not handle. I am concerned, however, about the 1st Republican Guard Corps pulling back and giving us all their area. The Americans destroyed the 9th Corps in the UAE. I will not have them do that to us. We need to shift forces to the east and quickly. The 21st Infantry Division is at Al-Hawlian, south of Al-Hufuf, so we will leave them in place. The 6th Armored Division is at Al-Karj, which could position them well to attack the flank of an American push out of Kuwait. However, since we do not expect to see any significant force following the 2nd Republican Guard Corps, we need to thin the center of our sector and shift east, General Ganem said, almost as if he was thinking out loud. Sir, we could leave the 16th in Bureda and the 20th in Unaysa, while bringing the 1st Mech east as well as the 30th Infantry. We have 2 divisions in Riyadh where 1 would be sufficient. That would give us 3 more divisions to move east to meet the American attack, Brigadier General Al-Bu Muhair offered. Ganem heard him and began looking at a map on the wall in his office. Without looking away from the map, he said, Issue the order to get them moving. I will know in an hour where I want them positioned. Notify the 6th Armor to be prepared to counterattack to the east. High above the Indian Ocean, a Magnum geosynchronous satellite had been in position since November of 1990, replacing another satellite that had been up for 4 years, but was running low on fuel for repositioning. With its huge 100-meter circular antenna, it soaked up electronic communications over the airwaves like a sponge. The information it gathered was quickly downloaded to the NSA, and, from there, forwarded to the Department of Defense and CENTCOM, almost in real time. Within hours of Ganem giving the order to move his divisions, General Schwarzkopf was reading the order at the same time as Ganem's division commanders read it. How sure are we that this information is accurate? Schwarzkopf asked O'Donnell. Sir, it appears to be very accurate, as Keyhole and Lacrosse Onyx are providing the same information. He's shifting his forces to the east. The 1st Mech Division has the furthest to travel, about 200 miles, and his reconnaissance elements pulled out about an hour ago. At best, maintaining 40 miles an hour, they'll be down in the new locations in 5 hours. The 6th Armor Division is sitting pat at Al-Karj, and the 21st is in Al-Hawlian. We'll see either the 34th or the 36th heading for Al-Hufuf shortly. He's going to try to blunt the offensive and counterattack with the 6th Armor Division, I suspect, O'Donnell speculated. All right, let's get this info to all the division commanders. We'll let 3 Corps take Al-Hufuf. The Marines can take the 21st, and 7th can head for Al-Karj and the 6th Armor Division. I suspect that the 1st Mech Division will come right into the middle between Al-Hufuf and Al-Karj in an attempt to put all his mobile forces together for a counterattack. He'll put the 2 infantry divisions somewhere between Al-Hufuf and Al-Karj, but on line with the 21st Infantry Division. What are we looking at as far as obstacles and minefields are concerned? Schwarzkopf asked. Keyhole shows us an extensive obstacle belt between Al-Hofuf and Al-Karj. He has time to put in one good tank ditch, wire and artillery registrations, O'Donnell said. First priority for the Air Force is to start bombing the crap out of them. I'll speak with Horner about this. I want him to get on it tonight, Schwarzkopf said, heading for the door and General Horner's office. Chapter 32. Command Brief. 25 April 1991. CENTCOM HQ, Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. Almost as soon as Abu Dhabi was liberated, the CENTCOM headquarters moved to the new location. General Schwarzkopf was greeted openly and warmly by the emir, who had returned as soon as U.S. forces had rolled into the city. He ordered the best accommodations for General Schwarzkopf and found suitable quarters and space for the headquarters. Now was the time to put Phase 2 into action. "Keep your seats," Schwarzkopf said as he walked into the room. All of the division commanders were present from Marsent, 3rd Corps, and 7th Corps. General Luck represented 16th Airborne Corps as they were continuing their operation in the west, and their plans would not change at this time. "Good morning, sir," General Schless said. First slide. "Sir, significant events in the last 24 hours are the completion of all resupply of the units in the UAE, the completion of 2 new POW camps, and the turnover of POWs to Oman and the UAE, and the link-up between the 29th Infantry Division and the 101st at Moghera." Turning in his chair to see General Luck, Schwarzkopf asked, "How did it go, the link-up?" "Went well, sir. The 29th is consolidating at this time and will push off in the morning as 2nd Brigade launches his attack in support of the 28th. The 3rd Brigade of the 101st will flow into Moghera today and be ready to launch tomorrow night in support of the 29th's next objective." "And the 82nd? Stormin Norman asked. "Jump went well. The port is secured and the ground movement will be completed today. I wish we had the full division, but we had to leave the 1 brigade as strategic reserve back at Bragg," Luck said. "So, no changes in your plan?" "No, sir. We're on track." Turning back to General Schless, Schwarzkopf said, "Sorry, Jim. Go ahead and continue." "Sir, if there are no questions about significant recent events, I will be followed by the G2, Schless indicated, and stepped to the side. General O'Donnell stepped up to the podium. Internally, Schwarzkopf chuckled to himself, as O'Donnell reminded him of a leprechaun because of his red hair, freckled face, and small stature. He also brought a pot of gold with his very accurate intelligence estimates. "Morning, sir. Indications are that the Iraqi 9 Corps does not offer any threat to our operations at this time. We believe that Lieutenant General Juwad Assad Rasol Shitna was killed, along with most of the Nayet's Corps staff, in an airstrike. What elements of the Corps that have survived are attempting to move back and join forces located in Saudi Arabia, and specifically the IV Corps. In the past 2 days, we have seen a shift in Iraqi forces with the 1st Republican Guard Corps pulling out of their positions and being replaced by elements of the IV Iraqi Corps. The IV Corps had 8 divisions spread out now on a line from Al-Hofuf to Burayda. He hasn't received the attention from the Air Force that the 1st Republican Guard Corps has received, and so he's at 80% strength and consists of 6 infantry divisions, 1 mechanized division, and 1 armored division. The mechanized division is equipped with the BMP, and the armored division has T-62 and some T-72 tanks. O'Donnell paused to let his comments sink in. In the west, the 2nd Republican Guard Corps is also withdrawing back towards Burayda. They're at 50% strength at this time, and we expect that they may withdraw all the way to King Khalid Military City, where there's a considerable stockpile of equipment, both Soviet and American vehicles that they captured, O'Donnell noted. "Schless, make a note," Schwarzkopf said. "Let's get the air guys to start hitting those vehicles at KKMC, but not the buildings or infrastructure, understood?" "Yes, sir, we'll get them on it right away," Schless replied, jotting down a note to himself. "Pardon me, O'Donnell. Please continue," Schwarzkopf directed. "Sir, in the area of Tabuk, the 2nd Iraqi Corps headquarters is there now, as well as the 2nd Iraqi Division. Remnants of the 7th, 51st, and 37th Infantry Divisions are attempting to link up with the 2nd in Tabuk. The 14th, or what's left of the 14th, is also attempting to consolidate in Tabuk. The 16th Airborne is putting a lot of pressure on the 7th, 51st, and 37th, making it difficult for them to rearm or refuel. Reports indicated many vehicles are abandoned on the side of the road due to lack of gas," O'Donnell stated, which brought a smile to Schwarzkopf's face. "We've witnessed a decrease in his air defensive systems, which we believe is due to the attrition that has happened to his search radars as well as the weapons and early warning systems. This past week, he launched a total of 20 sorties against our ground forces, down from 300 at the start of the war. His SAM systems and defenses around and inside Iraq have not been damaged and are intact at this time," O'Donnell concluded. "And his naval forces, where do we stand on those?" Schwarzkopf asked, not looking up from the notes he'd been writing. "Sir, his naval forces attempted to interdict the mine-clearing operations in the strait. 2 F-18 aircraft sank 2 of his corvettes off Siri Island, and the Princeton sank another with a Harpoon missile. Other vessels have withdrawn and are now standing off the coast of Kuwait and the Saudi cities of Dammam and Al-Jubail. We have confirmed that a submarine believed to have been given to the Iraqis by China through Iran has been sunk. We retrieved debris in the debris field that confirmed this information. We suspect there may be another sub operating in the area of the Gulf of Oman or Arabia, and the Navy is keeping an active search program for them," O'Donnell stated. "Sir, if you have no more questions, General Schless will continue." "Good rundown, O'Donnell. Tell your people they're doing a great job," Schwarzkopf said. O'Donnell nodded with a broad smile as he walked away as Schless stepped up. "Sir, for Phase 2, we recommend no change in the task organization. Is everyone okay with that?" No one objected. "Okay then, but we need to discuss a possible change that affects you, Ivan," he said, looking at the 3 Corps commander. "And that is," Ivan said. "Baker called me, and it seems that the king wants an Arab commander controlling the Arab forces, an Arab Corps commander. We may be replacing you and your staff with an Arab Corps headquarters. Sir, we do recommend that we bring everyone up online with 3 Corps on the right, allowing the bulk of host nation units to enter the cities, our 2 Marine divisions, along with the 1st British Armoured Division in the center, and 7 Corps on the left flank. This places our heaviest corps opposing the bulk of the IV Iraqi Corps and the 2nd Republican Guard Corps should they attempt to swing into the flank of 7 Corps, which we feel they won't attempt," Schless stated. As he spoke, he pointed to a large wall map showing the direction of advance for the respective corps and their sectors. "Fred," Schwarzkopf said, gaining General Franks's attention, "how do you feel about this?" "Sir, from what I've seen so far, this doesn't concern me as long as I retain my attack helicopters to give me ample warning and deep battle interdiction capability. Our Air Force brothers have been pounding the IV for the past 3 days, so I don't see a problem if they've been as accurate as we've experienced thus far," General Franks concluded, to Schwarzkopf's satisfaction. "So everyone is good with this plan of maneuver, I'm hearing. Good, let's get it done. We commence Phase 2 at 0800 tomorrow morning." Chapter 33. Phase 2 commences. 25th of April, 1991. Team Delta, 3rd Battalion, 69th Armor, Al-Sila, United Arab Emirates. Captain Poggi watched the evening before as the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment passed through them, heading west. He knew that they would be following them shortly, and in the middle of the night, Lieutenant Colonel Altemeyer, the battalion commander, called a commander's meeting and issued the orders commencing at 800 hours the next day. Poggy had to give up one tank platoon to their sister infantry battalion and received one platoon from the infantry, equipped with Bradley fighting vehicles. Lieutenant Kincaid was back, much to Lieutenant Bagel's satisfaction. Bagel felt that he and Kincaid had worked well on Medina Ridge and was glad to be able to work with him again. Assembling his platoon leaders, tank commanders, and first sergeant, Poggy gave the company order for the day's operation. He spread his map out on the ground and squatted down next to it. He used a new pencil as a pointer. Okay, the battalion moves out at 800. Order of march is us on the left flank, Team Bravo on the right flank, and Team Alpha following in the center. We'll spread out on the left flank. No need to eat someone else's dust. From left to right, 1st platoon, 2nd platoon, infantry, and 3rd platoon. I'll be between 2nd and infantry. 1st sergeant will bring up the headquarters section at 500 yards behind us. There's no paved road, but hard-packed sand from what intel's telling us. We depart from our current location and take a heading of 240 degrees for 178 miles to Yabrin. Anticipate hitting an Iraqi infantry division after we pass through there. The Cav will feel them out before we get there, and I'm sure we'll receive more instructions as we approach. Maintain speed of 30 miles per hour. Any questions? Poggy asked, looking at the platoon leaders' faces. Sir, Lieutenant Bagel said, where is the rest of the division? The division is the left flank for the Corps, and we're the left flank for the division. There's a possibility that the Iraqi 6th Armor Division will attempt to counterattack, and if so, he'll be coming right at us. He's located west of Harad in Al-Kharj. The Cav should be able to give us a heads up if the 6th decides to move against us, Poggy said. Sir, what about resupply of fuel? 160 miles is going to stretch us pretty thin, Bagel asked. The Cav has secured a refuel point for us at 80 miles out. That heading will take us right to it, but just in case, these are the coordinates. Poggy read them. Plug that into your sluggers so you don't get lost. Kincaid, how are you for fuel? Poggy asked. We're topped off, sir, and good for about 250 miles at 30 miles per hour, Kincaid replied. Poggy nodded. All right, be sure you're topped off with fuel and ammo and plenty of bottled water. Let's keep the radio chatter to a minimum. Mount up. Give me an up when you're ready. That's all, Poggy said and stood up as he retrieved his map and folded it. Lieutenant Bagel was deep in thought as he walked back to his tank. We're going into another fight, it looks like, after driving for 5+ hours, plus a refuel stop, so it'll be later in the afternoon before we get into it and we'll have the setting sun in our eyes. Maybe we'll get lucky and the attack will be delayed until dark. Much rather do this after dark. Our night sights are so much better than theirs. Night would be so much better. Once he was seated in the commander's hatch, Bagel made a net call on the platoon radio. Panther 1-1 elements, give me an up when you're ready, Bagel transmitted, within sight of his 3 other tanks. Looking about, he got a thumbs up from each of the tank commanders. Panther 6, Panther 1-1, all elements up and ready, over, Bagel announced on the company command net. Roger, was all the response he received from Poggy. Moments later, Poggy issued the order. All Panther elements move out. Bagel's tank lurched forward, and Bagel was convinced that this was caused by his driver enjoying bouncing him off the commander's hatch. Watching his 4 tanks move on parallel azimuths, Bagel looked back. The huge dust cloud could mean only one thing. 7 Corps was on the move and heading west. The 36th Infantry Division had its orders. Move from the really nice south side of Riyadh to Harad, a really shitty place nowhere in the desert. Harad has the only paved road from the coast to Riyadh, and the Americans are going to need it for the MSR. We must stop them at Harad, MG Mahir al-Amili, commander of the 36th, thought as he moved down the one paved road to Harad. His lead brigade was almost there now, and the other 2 would arrive shortly after him. His defense would be 2 brigades forward and 1 brigade back. All 3 brigades would be in strong point positions that others had placed along the road. The way they were situated, all 3 could fire on a unit that attempted to move between the 2 forward strong points. He had few armored vehicles in the division, being an infantry division, and few tanks, T-63s, which were older Soviet tanks. He knew that on a fluid battlefield these tanks wouldn't stand a chance, but dug down in a defensive position, they should be okay. Keeping the American close air support aircraft off the tanks' backs would be the problem. Arriving at the first strong point, Alamili saw the first problem. The brigade commander met him as he pulled up. "General Alamili, very good to see you," the brigade commander said as he saluted. Alamili's salute was fast, almost as fast as his tongue. "Colonel, don't you think you should have camouflage over your tanks in their hull defilade positions?" "Yes, General. We were going to get to that right after the men had a chance to rest," the brigade commander said. "Rest? They will have a very long rest if the American attack aircraft show up. Get them on it right away, now!" Alamili practically shouted. Even the soldiers at the nearest tank could hear the conversation, and without further orders began getting their netting in place. "Come with me," Alamili said, pointing at his vehicle. The driver already knew where they were going. It didn't take him long to pull up in front of the division artillery commander's tent. "Get out," Alamili said to the infantry brigade commander. The division artillery commander recognized the voice and exited his tent. "Ah, good afternoon, General Alamili. What is so good about it? Why is your artillery not camouflaged? Have you and this commander worked out your target reference points? Have you registered your guns as yet? I have not heard a shot fired yet. Are you waiting for the Americans to show up before doing it? What have you two been waiting for? Get it done and get it done now, or you will be on the first helicopter to Baghdad. Am I clear?" Alamili said, not too subtly. Both officers were sweating profusely, and not from the heat. "Yes, sir," they both responded in unison and saluted. Alamili responded with a growl as he headed to his vehicle. He had visited the 21st Infantry Division on previous occasions, as they were, and had always been, in Al-Holian. He was satisfied with their field discipline and craft. Their positions were well camouflaged, but they had lost some artillery and tanks to the American close air support that seemed to come down from on high and attack well-camouflaged positions. They had a good obstacle belt across their entire sector. He felt confident that this unit was ready. He had initially planned on putting the 30th Infantry in Al-Hofuf, but decided that it would be quicker to move the 34th Infantry Division from Riyadh to Al-Hofuf and move the 30th to Riyadh in their place. The 34th should be in Al-Hofuf now, and he could check on them in the morning. "Driver, back to Riyadh," Alamili ordered. The Hemts with their 5,000-gallon holding tanks of diesel fuel were standing by in Yabrin when 3rd Battalion, 69th Armor, rolled into the refuel point. The refuel point had followed the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment and set up the refuel point at Yabrin. This was just one of 6 spread across the front of the 7th Corps to take care of the vehicles. Each point was operated by a National Guard unit trained just for this sort of mission, a tactical military truck stop. A tank would pull up and immediately start being refueled. When topped off, it would move to the next station, and all fluid levels would be checked and topped off if necessary. Once the vehicle was serviced, the tank crew was served a hot meal, cold water, and coffee. They would then wait for the rest of the unit to be serviced before proceeding on. At some point short of the designated line of departure for the attack, units would wait for the entire division to be ready. This was not a rapid process, considering the entire division was being serviced. It was 2100 hours when the word came down to resume the movement to contact in the direction of At-Tawdihiyah, located on Highway 10 between Al-Kharj and Harad. Lieutenant Bagel was satisfied now that he didn't have the sun in his eyes, and they would be advancing under the cover of darkness. Their night vision sights on the tank to include thermal imaging sites, were very effective. The slightest heat difference clearly showed up, and the heat generated by a tank or vehicle was much greater than the surrounding sand of the desert. Bagel was hunting this night. Hunting for Iraqi tanks. "Ramos, take it slow coming up on this crest. I want to see what's over there before we charge across. Got it?" Bagel said to his new driver. In fact, Bagel was running with an entire new crew that hadn't worked together before. His previous crew had all gotten promoted out of his vehicle for other vehicles. His master gunner had moved up to become a tank commander for one of his other tanks. His driver had moved up to be a loader on another vehicle, and his loader had become the gunner on another vehicle. Movement of crews wasn't unheard of in combat, but everyone attempted to avoid it. "Anderson, be ready with a sabot round when we fire," Staff Sergeant Adams, the new master gunner, directed. Ramos had his night vision goggles on and could clearly see on this moonless night. The tank's night sights provided excellent visibility of the terrain for Sergeant Adams, and he was switching between the night sight and the thermal sights. As the tank reached the crest of the ridge, Lieutenant Bagel whispered, "Holy shit." Laid out before him and his platoon at 2,000 meters was the defense of one of the Iraqi divisions. Bagel could see both vehicles and fighting positions. Light discipline was almost non-existent with vehicle headlights on and soldiers smoking. A cigarette stood out very well when viewed through the night observation devices. A sabot round was already loaded, so Bagel gave the commands for the first engagement. "Gunner, tank." "Identified," Adams responded. "Up," yelled Specialist Anderson. "Fire," Bagel ordered, and immediately the tank rocked from the sabot round, leaving the muzzle of the tank. Almost instantaneously, the turret of a T-62 tank 2,000 meters away exploded. Bagel immediately looked for another target. On his right and left, the other tanks of the platoon were engaging Iraqi vehicles and bunkers. Although he couldn't see what the other platoons were doing, he knew they were engaging as well. "All Panther elements, move up," Captain Poggy ordered. "Ramos, move out," Bagel ordered, and Ramos gave the tank some gas. He had already picked the next position he would sprint the tank to, a position that would offer some defilade of the hull and yet allow the gunner to engage targets. As they rolled forward, Bagel spotted a bunker that was engaging with a heavy machine gun. "Gunner, heat, bunker." "Identified." "Heat up." "Fire." And again the tank rocked with the heat round leaving the muzzle. The bunker disappeared in a cloud of sand and flame. Bagel was concerned about his other 3 tanks, but a quick glance showed they were holding in formation, each covering the other. As he continued to scan for other targets, he saw a group of Iraqi soldiers emerge from the ground. They were carrying what appeared to be RPG anti-tank guns. "Bunker from my position." Bagel let a long stream of 50 caliber rounds enter into the middle of the group. When he stopped, no one was moving. As they closed on the infantry positions, Bagel came to rely more on his 50 cal, as did the others. Finally, the shooting died down due to an absence of Iraqi vehicles and soldiers. To the northeast, they could see flashes of artillery being employed, and some tracers from 50 cal machine guns and small arms. When Bagel got the call to halt, his platoon was well past the first line of Iraqi positions. Bagel contacted each of his tanks and got a status report on damage, fuel, and ammo. They all reported no damage and 60% on ammo. Most of what had been used was the 50 cal ammunition, as there were few tanks. At 400, Brigadier General Al-Bu Muhair knocked on the door to General Al-Amili's bedroom. It took a couple of hard raps on the door before he received a response to come in. "General, this best be good to wake me," Al-Amili said, still half asleep. "Sir, we are getting reports from the 21st and 36th Divisions of heavy contact. The 36th does not know if he can hold much longer. He estimates that 3 divisions are coming at him. He is sure he has 2 divisions attacking at this time," Al-Bu Muhair said. Even before he finished, Al-Amili was out of bed and getting dressed. What is the status of the 1st Mech Division and the 6th Armored? Sir, the 1st Mech Division has arrived in its assembly area and is refueling at this time. General Alavi says he can be ready to launch a counterattack in 1 hour. According to General Faizan, the 6th Armored Division is ready whenever you issue the order, General Albu Muhair said. He wanted to be sure that Al-Amili knew that this was General Faizan's estimate, and not his own. Good. Tell General Faizan to counterattack along Highway 10 to Harad. Tell General Alavi to counterattack also towards Harad as soon as he is ready. They will link up together there, and then we will have them drive towards Az-Salwa, thus cutting right through the rear of this attacking corps. Panther 6, Cheetah 6, over, Lieutenant Colonel Piscal transmitted. Cheetah 6, Panther 6, over, Poggy replied to his battalion commander. Panther 6, when you reach Highway 10, I want you to set up a blocking position on the south side of the road. Cougar elements will take a position astride the road with Tiger elements north of the road. Be prepared for a possible counterattack by the Iraqi Armored Division located in Al-Kharj. Give me a heads up when you have them in sight. How copy? Cheetah 6, Panther 6, I have good copy. We'll be moving into position in 15 mics, over. Roger, give me an up when you're in position. Cheetah 6 out. On Captain Poggy's orders, the company turned and faced to the west, taking up positions overlooking very broken terrain with numerous washes and wadis. Bagel conducted a visual reconnaissance of the terrain and determined quickly that this was not conducive to tank operations. Panther 6, Panther 1-1, over. Go ahead, 1-1. 6, this terrain is crap for tanks. I doubt if we'll see anyone coming this way in this stuff. It's deep wadis and washes, over. 1-1, that should make your job easy then. Be prepared to pull out and attack north if they get through on Highway 10. How copy? 6, I have a good copy. Chapter 34. Fob Falcon. 26th April, 1991. 2nd Brigade, 101st Airborne. FOB Copperhead. Activities at FOB Copperhead had quieted down. The half-hearted ground attack against the 3rd Battalion and the 1st Battalion had been destroyed with a couple of 100 prisoners taken. 2nd Battalion, along with the attack helicopters, had cut the attack on the airfield to ribbons. There were few prisoners. The lift battalions got a chance to get some crew rest, and during the night had flown to FOB Copperhead for the anticipated lift of the 2nd Brigade to FOB Falcon. Once established at Falcon, CH-47s would fly in with 500-gallon fuel blivets of JP-4 aviation fuel for the lift ships and attack helicopters. The 28th Infantry Division would conduct a link-up and move in with their HIMTTs to refuel their track vehicles. Establishment of the FOB was critical to the ongoing operations. Colonel Dean Anderson sat in his vehicle, which would be in the ground convoy. Fuel was too important to waste flight time hauling unnecessary vehicles into the FOB. His operations officer's vehicle had the same radios and would be flown in on the lift. Dean was a bit nervous about this operation. "Hey, Keith," Anderson called to his operations officer, Major Keith Herbert. "Sir," Herbert replied, looking up from his map, which he had spread out on the hood of Anderson's Humvee. "What's the status of the lift?" Anderson asked. "Sir, it's a go. Weather is good with no fog now that we're away from the coast. No wind today, so no need to worry about a dust storm. Only adverse factor is the temperature. It'll get back into the low 90s today. Aircraft are all up and ready. Troops should start loading in another 10 minutes, with liftoff at 0430 hours. And flight time to the objective?" "Sir, it's 75 miles to the objective, which is 8 miles north of Al-Barika. It's astride the main highway to Tabuk, which is another 85 miles beyond that. The 28th Infantry is currently 80 miles south of Alburica. Once we land, we should be operational for the attack helicopters in 2 hours. You seem a bit antsy about this operation, sir. What's bothering you about it? No, nothing really, just what-ifing in my head. CH-47s are bringing a battery of artillery on the first lift, correct? Yes, sir, and 2 more batteries on the second lift with a third lift for the artillery. Sir, we have it all covered. Let's load up. That's your aircraft over there. We'll be following the first lift, Major Herbert said, folding his map and pointing to the UH-60 Black Hawk 100 feet away. Night flying could be some of the most pleasant flying, especially in a large formation of Black Hawk helicopters. Generally, there was little turbulence, which made for a pleasant ride. With 15 soldiers in each aircraft, plus the door gunner and crew chief, it was necessary to close the doors until just prior to touchdown to prevent anyone from falling out. Captain Sims commanded Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 502nd Infantry, 1st Brigade of the 101st. An officer candidate graduate, he had been a young sergeant when he'd attended, so he'd been around the block as an enlisted soldier. He knew all the tricks, schemes, and excuses that soldiers would use when they screwed up. His soldiers were proud of the fact he had come up through the ranks, but frustrated that they had a difficult time pulling the wool over his eyes. Sims was flying with his 2 RTOs and a rifle squad of 11 men and a medic. They were in the chalk 3 position on the 60-ship lift of Black Hawks. The night was dark as the bottom of a dry well with no moon and no lights on the ground. He estimated their altitude to be no more than 200 feet. A glance into the cockpit showed that the pilots both had their nods on, and the green instrument lighting turned down very low, so he couldn't really see the altimeter. Looking around at the faces of those with him, Sims noticed that the kids he had brought to Saudi Arabia 8 months before were all gone. Now they were battle-tested men. Same faces, but instead of anxious looks, all he saw were determined professional glances. There was no bravado as before. A few that had originally come over were not present, having been sent home with wounds, some repairable, some permanent, some life-ending. He would remember the faces of those kids. Sims was proud of his boys, who weren't much younger than him, and the squad leader was the same age as him. Sims's concentration was lost when the crew chief yelled, 2 minutes. Unlike the days of Vietnam, when, at the 2-minute mark, the Cobra gunships would roll hot and shoot up the landing zone, the attack aircraft raced ahead and flew low over the landing zone, looking for targets. None engaged unless they had a target, and no targets were engaged. At the 1-minute mark, the aircraft went into a noticeable deceleration, and that was the signal to open the doors. As the doors slid back, the dust from the landing aircraft swirled into the main cabin, but the soldiers ignored it. As the wheels touched, the first soldiers were out the door with the rucksacks they had been sitting on, following them to the ground, where each soldier immediately took a prone position, searching for a target or waiting to be engaged. In less than 4 seconds, the aircraft was lifting off, empty except for the crew. Sims and company waited for the dust to settle before they moved out. In those few minutes, Sims checked his map, took a compass head to his objective, and made a company net call to his platoon leaders. All Banshee elements, Banshee 6, give me an up, he said on the company radio net. When he received the last up from the newest platoon leader, he gave the order to move out. Bravo Company had landed on the west side of a rocky ridgeline that was to the west and parallel with the main road north to Tabuk. His battalion was the eastern side of Fob Falcon and the priority unit, as they had what was expected to be the most dangerous avenue of approach into the Fob. On the south end of the ridge was an open wadi, right into the Fob. This had to be closed to prevent an Iraqi force from entering. To do that, the battalion commander had assigned his anti-tank company to the south of Bravo and had placed 1 platoon of his anti-tank vehicles in Sims's sector. The rest of the anti-tank company, Delta Company, was south of the opening or deep within the opening to take advantage of its long-range fire. As Sims reached the top of the ridgeline they would defend from, he looked down on the highway. There was no movement on the road, but wreckage lay everywhere. Iraqi trucks, tanks, and BTR-60s were all scattered along and across the road. The smell of burnt rubber and human bodies was strong. Through his nods, he could make out the details of the carnage before him. He quickly turned, as he had things to do before daylight to get his company ready for what might come. Colonel Malouf, commander of the 3rd Regiment of the 51st Iraqi Division, or what was left of it, decided that movement in the day was a kiss of death. After the disaster that had taken General Zogby and the other regimental commanders, he had regrouped the remnants of the other 2 regiments and his own, and was conducting a delaying action against this new mechanized threat that had come before his elements. Expecting the light infantry of the Airmobile Division, he was now being pressured by a mechanized force. They weren't as aggressive as the paratroopers with the chicken patches on their shoulders, but this force had the heavy weapons that the paratroopers lacked. If I could just keep the attack helicopters and the close air support off, then we would have a chance of getting to Tabuk, he thought. In the cool night air, he was pleased at the discipline he was seeing in his elements as they slowly moved up the one-paved road to Tabuk. His map was spread out on the front of his vehicle. He had a poncho over his head and covering the map so he could use a flashlight to read the map and not give away his position. Before daylight, we have to get off this road. We are 20 kilometers south of Albureca. We should be there in an hour at 500, so that gives us another hour before the sun comes up, he calculated. This large wadi 20 kilometers north of Albureca should do nicely for us to hide in today. Then 2 more days to get to Tabuk. Hopefully this nightmare will be over for me. Colonel Malouf folded his map and began giving instructions to his operations officer. First Strike 6, Anvil 6, over, the Alpha Company commander radioed. Anvil 6, go ahead, Lieutenant Colonel Donald replied. First Strike 6, we have company approaching from the south, and it doesn't sound like friendlies. Over. The other company commanders heard this net call, and right away alerted their subordinate platoons to be prepared. Anvil 6, confirm who those people are before you engage. I've had no word on the location of friendlies. Roger, First Strike 6. Anvil 6 out. Donald quickly grabbed his brigade net radio and called Colonel Anderson. Strike 6, First Strike 6, over. First Strike 6, Strike 3, over, Herbert replied, as Strike 6 was overlooking his map, and nodded for Herbert to take the call. Strike 3, we have company approaching from the south. Do you have any contact with the friendlies moving north for the link-up? Over. First Strike, that's a negative. We've had no contact. Over. Roger, is the artillery in yet? Over. We have 1 battery on the ground and ready to receive missions. Over. Roger. What about the attack aircraft? Are they on station? Negative. They returned to refuel after escorting the first lift. They should be back in 1 hour. Over. Strike 3. You best be getting some TAC air up then, because we're about to get into it. First, strike out. Donald was not a happy camper. Minimal artillery support from a battery of 105 mm howitzers with no attack helicopters was not his idea of a fun morning. Donald wanted to see for himself who this was before he allowed his people to commence an engagement. Grabbing his 2 RTOs and his S3 and fire support coordinator, he set out, moving to Anvil's positions on the south side of the wadi. The 3rd Regiment, 51st Infantry Lead Elements moved at 20 kilometers per hour, constantly scanning into the night sky for the American attack helicopters, which they had learned to fear more than anything. They hadn't experienced any American tanks, but knew that some American mechanized force was trailing them north. They had engaged some infantry fighting vehicles and some scout vehicles, but no tanks. The tail end of the regiment was all those from the other 2 regiments who had somehow survived the onslaught that had happened days before. Everyone now just wanted to get to the safety of Tabuk, with the 2nd and 37th Divisions under their air defense umbrella. Colonel Malouf had moved his vehicle forward and was following behind his lead element, the 1st Battalion of the brigade. If something was going to happen, he wanted to know about it immediately and be able to react, not waiting for a radio call. His options were limited, as he had lost all artillery, and there were no attack helicopters. The divisional artillery had come north first, but he had received a report that they had been hit by an airstrike along this road the day before. The road was already covered with destroyed vehicles from both his division moving north and Corps supply vehicles that had been moving south weeks before. Most bodies lay where they had fallen, as there were few inhabitants around to bury the dead in accordance with Muslim tradition. They have to pick up the pace. The sun will be up in an hour, and we need to get the entire regiment hidden in that wadi before then, Malouf thought, when the first sound of trouble reached his ears. Small arms fire was crackling at the front, and the distinct sound said it was not only AK-47s, but also American M16s. Then the sound of an American M60 machine gun entered the orchestra. Damn, let this be just a small patrol, he thought, as his vehicle dodged wrecked vehicles, attempting to move toward the sound of the guns. When he heard the first explosion and saw a vehicle to his front become a burning cauldron, he knew this was no skirmish. First Strike 6, Anvil 6. We have BTR-60s. I'm engaging. Anvil 6, what's their strength? Donald asked, but got no response. Then he heard the first explosion, but didn't think it was a Tau round. Dog 6, have you engaged? Over, Donald asked his Delta Company commander. First Strike 6, that's a negative, the commander responded in a near whisper. We're letting them get into the kill zone before we engage. I believe that was an Alpha Tango 4 from Anvil Elements. Over. 2 more explosions went off, briefly lighting up the night sky. Damn, I wish the sun would come up. Another hour, I suspect, Donald thought. Sir, Anvil is calling in artillery at this time. He has asked for Ilum first, followed by HEVT, the F-Scord said. Good. We'll get a better look at what we got, Donald replied. From where he sat, he could clearly see the exchange of small arms, but not who or what was doing the shooting. He was concerned, as he only had half of this battalion on the ground. The second half wouldn't be arriving for another 30 minutes. Only 10 of his 20 anti-tank vehicles were on the ground. When the first of 5 artillery flares illuminated the night sky, his heart sank. This was an organized battalion of BTR-60s with infantry. He grabbed the hand mic for the brigade command net. Strike 6, First Strike 6, over. Go ahead, First Strike 6, Anderson came back. Strike 6, contact. Appears to be a BTR-60 battalion with follow-on forces, over. Roger, what is your situation? Anvil is engaging, but I have only the 10 Tau vehicles that came on the first lift. I don't think we can hold them with just 10. Over. Roger, I'll have Second Strike send his to assist. Break, Second Strike, Strike 6, over. A moment later, the voice of the 2nd Battalion commander came over the net. Strike 6, I monitored and am sending them to assist. They'll contact First Strike 6 when they approach. Over. First Strike 6, did you copy? Strike 6 asked. Strike 6, I copied and am standing by. Over. Donald began to breathe a bit easier, knowing that 10 more Tau vehicles would be joining the fight on his side. In the time that Donald had been talking to Strike 6 on the radio, VT Fuse artillery began to hit the Iraqi column, stripping anything that was on the outside of the vehicles away, to include antennas. Although Colonel Malouf couldn't transmit, it was a gift from God, as American anti-tank gunners were trained to shoot command vehicles first, and the antennas on the vehicles were a dead giveaway. Malouf began to realize that where he planned to turn the column off the road for the day was exactly where the Americans were defending. He had to move them out of this kill zone, and that meant accelerating up the road. With his antenna shot away, he had to issue verbal orders. He quickly found the commander of the 1st Battalion and told him to move north out of the kill zone and find a place to hide for the day. Quickly, that commander was moving his entire force north up the road, racing through the gauntlet of enemy fire. Some vehicles made it, others did not. Once Malouf had coordinated with the 1st Battalion, he raced his vehicle back south to find the next commander. The 2nd Battalion commander hadn't had his antennas stripped, so Malouf climbed aboard his vehicle so he could use the radio while his crew was replacing his own antenna. His message to the subordinate commanders was clear: race through the engagement area going north and find a place to spend the day in hiding, or stay here and die for sure. Returning to his vehicle, he ordered his driver to move north with all possible speed. As Donald had been watching the battle unfold, he was surprised that the Iraqis didn't attack, but drove as fast as they could through the engagement area. They weren't stopping to fight, but merely attempting to escape. Strike 6, 1st Strike 6, over. Go ahead, 1st Strike 6, Anderson replied. Strike 6, these guys aren't attacking, but merely attempting to escape north. They're putting up minimum resistance in the engagement area, but accelerating into and through it. We're being selective on the engagements, taking out BTR-60s first and anything else second. Have not seen any tanks, over. Roger, understand you can hold your positions at this time, over. Strike 6, that's affirmative, over. Roger, 1st Strike 6, keep us informed, out. As Donald sat with Anvil 6, watching the Iraqi vehicles attempting to race through the engagement area, he noticed one vehicle that had raced through the engagement area twice, and now it was entering a 3rd time. Tapping Anvil 6 on the shoulder, Donald pointed at it and asked, "You see that vehicle?" "Yes, sir, the one turning around." "Kill it. That's got to be a leader," Donald stated. Anvil 6 was on the radio immediately. Moments later, 2 AT-4 anti-tank rockets hit the vehicle. The vehicle instantly stopped, and smoke poured out of the engine compartment. Then the flames began to escape through the side portholes and the top hatch. One figure cleared the top, with the flames licking at his boots as he rolled off the top and dropped to the ground. Donald noted his fall and lack of movement once he hit. Colonel Malouf had already driven through the engagement area twice, guiding and encouraging his forces to get through the danger zone. One more trip should do it, he thought when the first round hit the forward right side wheel, followed by a second round, which hit the rear engine compartments. The first round caused the vehicle to lurch to the right as the wheel disintegrated. The second round set off fuel and killed the engine. Lying on the floor in the front of the vehicle, Malouf looked back and quickly realized that the burning fuel was coming for him. He attempted to jump up, but could barely move as his back had slammed into something with the first explosion. Slowly, too slowly, it seemed, he dragged himself up to the top hatch and pulled himself up on top of the vehicle. As he rolled away from the flames coming out of the open hatch and licking at his boots, he misjudged the distance he had before he rolled off the top. The night suddenly got much darker and then peaceful. Colonel Malouf slowly opened his eyes. He had trouble getting them to focus at first, and when they did, nothing made sense. He was lying on a stretcher with an IV bottle stuck in his arm. He closed his eyes, knowing that his soldiers had retrieved him and brought him to safety. That illusion was quickly broken when he heard a voice that wasn't speaking Arabic. "Yes, sir. We'll have him on the next chopper going back. He has a bad back injury but should recover in a couple of months. They may want to do surgery and then physical therapy for a month or so," one voice said. "How much morphine is he on?" another asked. "As much as I dare give him," the other voice answered. "Can I talk to him?" "You can try. Don't know if he'll comprehend anything," the doctor answered. "Colonel Malouf, can you hear me, sir?" Donald asked, squatting down beside the man on the stretcher. Maloof attempted to focus his eyes. "I hear. Colonel, you have a bad back injury. We're flying you out to a hospital in Yanbu for treatment. You're heavily drugged with morphine," Donald told him. "And my regiment, what?" Maloof's eyes became very wide with pain. "Just lie there and don't try to move, Colonel. Some of your brigade got out of our engagement zone. Some didn't, and the tail is now caught between us and the 28th Infantry Division moving up from the south. If they surrender, they'll be taken prisoner and treated well. We aren't here to kill anyone, only to move you out of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait," Donald said. Maloof tried again to say something, but the pain prevented it. "Colonel, just lay there and rest. The chopper is on short final, and you'll be out of here soon. You take care, sir," Donald said as he stood and watched 2 medics pick the colonel up. "If I get captured, I hope they treat me this well," Donald thought, knowing that he would not be captured. The 2nd Brigade as well as the 1st Brigade commanders had discussed this, and all agreed they would not be captured. Chapter 35. Rethink This. 26th April 1991. Republican Palace, Baghdad, Iraq. Lieutenant General Igor Petrov had seen the satellite photos before he'd left the Russian embassy that morning. He had already seen them before he'd left Moscow, but wanted to be sure nothing had changed on the latest pass by the Zenit reconnaissance satellite. The photos were clear and clearly indicated what Petrov had feared. Almost more frightening, though, was having to bring this news to Saddam Hussein. But the powers that be had insisted that a high-ranking general officer present the evidence. "At least he cannot have me shot, I don't think," Petrov thought as he walked into the Republican Palace. The Republican Palace had been built in the 1950s, commissioned by King Faisal II for his wedding, which hadn't occurred because he'd been assassinated before it could take place. Saddam had found it to be to his liking and met dignitaries there for important meetings. As Petrov walked through the entrance, he appreciated the architecture, but thought the IKEA furniture was out of place in such a place of such beauty. He was ushered into an office where Saddam rose from an overstuffed chair to greet him. Extending both arms, Saddam grasped Petrov by the shoulder and kissed him on both cheeks. "Please, General, sit down," Saddam said, pointing to a chair next to the one he had been seated in. Between the chairs sat an interpreter. Saddam didn't speak Russian, and Petrov didn't speak Arabic. Petrov could speak English, but Saddam always said his English skills were very bad. Once the two were comfortably seated, and all the minions had been excused from the room, Saddam looked to the general. "So, what is so important that Moscow has sent you to talk to me?" he asked. "Mr. President, Moscow has great concern for your victory in this conflict. We want to see you win a great victory over the puppets of America. We want you to become the leader of the Arab world," Petrov said. "I am that already, General. My army has rolled over Saudi Arabia and the UAE. My navy controls the strait to the Arabian Gulf, and my air force controls the sky above," Saddam boasted. "Is this guy for real or what?" Petrov thought as he studied the man's face. "He's not joking. He believes this fairy tale." "Yes, sir, and we want to see you to continue this way. That is why I have been asked to show you these latest satellite photos we received on the last pass this morning," Petrov said, handing the photos to Saddam. He did not take them. "And what would these photos show me that I do not already know?" Saddam questioned. Petrov was a professional, but his temperature was rising at the thought of this arrogant despot. "Sir, these photos will show you that the American Scientiot Airborne Corps is very close to seizing Tabuk, that the 3 Corps in the east is moving on Al-Hofuf with both Arab forces and an American division. The Marines are moving to the west of Al-Hofuf with 3 divisions, and the 7th Corps, their heavy corps, is about to cross Highway 10 and cut Riyadh off. In addition, they have a sufficient supply line to sustain them for another 6 months of combat. Their airfields are full of aircraft. Their fleet is unchallenged. In San Diego, California, another National Guard division is loading onto ships, having completed its rotation at the National Training Center. They will be here in a month, Petrov concluded. General, I know most of this information without looking at photographs. We are slowly drawing the Americans away from their supply bases in Oman, thus extending their supply lines. Soon they will be stretched so thin that when the 1st Republican Guard Corps attacks, the Americans will be exhausted, Saddam said, rather pleased with himself. Sir, that is fine. But at the rate the Americans are advancing, they will take Dammam, and when that happens, their resupply operations will shift from Oman to Dammam and be very short again. As these photos show, they have supply ships loaded and just waiting to come in to offload in Dammam, Petrov indicated. General, the 1st Republican Guard Corps has moved back into Kuwait as we speak and joined the 7th Iraqi Corps, which has 3 divisions outside of Kuwait as a screening force. It was never my intent to hold Saudi Arabia, but merely to cripple it, destroy its oil fields, which we have successfully done. This will raise the price of oil to an acceptable level for me, Saddam said. Petrov could not believe what he was hearing. Now, Kuwait is a different matter. They are the 19th province of Iraq, the Basra province, and as such will be retained by us. The meddling British cut them loose almost 100 years ago, and we are now taking them back. Suddenly, Saddam's tone changed. And no one, American, British, Iranian, or Russian, is going to tell us different, he said with anger etched across his face. I wonder if he is going to have me shot now, Petrov considered. Sir, we are not telling you to surrender Kuwait, merely advising you as to what forces are arrayed before you, and offer what help we can without being directly involved in the conflict. As you know, we are having our own internal struggles right now, and can do little militarily to assist you, Petrov stated. That is the party line. General Petrov, I am glad we had this meeting. I would like to give these photos to my Minister of Defense, if you do not mind, Saddam said as he stood, signaling that the meeting was over. Those are for you, Mr. President, in the hope that they will assist you in your victory, Petrov said. Fat chance, he thought, however.
Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss another video.
In the meantime, we have plenty of reading material to keep you busy. You can find it all on our website, frontlinepublishinginc.com.